I'm unmuting myself.
All right, we should be good. We should be good to go then. All right, cool. Today we're going to talk about coffee consumption, caffeine prior to time trialing, performance enhancer. Time trialing is the topic of today. Very good timing. We had Scott. Scott's on live today. He just knocked out a 40K this past weekend. We had the state TT that just happened, but more importantly, here in Memphis, we are starting a time trial series. So time trials, they are the race of truth. And essentially what that means is there is no drafting. It's not you and your teammates trying to beat someone else and their teammates and the rest of the field. It's you against the clock, against the course. Okay, and those are all three important things. You need to know the course. You need to know the distance. It's the absolute lowest time that wins, not the absolute highest power. So keeping speed high is key. That's where knowing the course is important. We've talked some before on the Coach's Hour about pacing, and we can get into that a little bit as well if that's a topic y'all want to talk about. But essentially time trialing, if you are, so tomorrow we'll kind of go into this. Tomorrow we're going to have what's called an Eddie Merckx division, which is a road bike. It could be a mountain bike. It could be any bike that is not a time trial triathlon specific bike. And I'll show you an example here in just a second. No other aero gears allowed. So the crazy aero helmets, I don't know if Dale's got one of his pointy ended ones or not, but here's an aero helmet. So the fancy rounded, super fast helmets will not be allowed in an Eddie Merckx division. What's that?
Looks like an astronaut.
Looks like an astronaut, yes. Some of the other ones, you look more like a dinosaur. They got the pointy end to it. I like this one because I spend quite a bit of time. First off, because I look really awesome in it, as you can tell. And that's like half the battle. But I spend quite a bit of time with my head in a lower position. So if you are aero and you spend a lot of time looking with your head more tucked down, this helmet's a good one. If you spend a lot of time with your chin up and crouch low, you can get away with in that. And the aero helmets with the long tail are probably a little bit faster overall if you keep your head very static. But so Eddie Merckx, you cannot use an aero helmet. No skin suits are allowed. So the skin suit, that is the one-piece variety. You look really attractive in the one-piece skin suits. So think about Eddie Merckx as if you were going to go out on a 3-hour ride, what would your setup be? So normal riding wheels. We're going to let people go as deep as they want with that, but no disc wheels are going to be allowed. So a disc wheel is that one solid disc. Usually folks will use it on the rear. So that will not be allowed in the Eddie Merckx. In our aero division,
there's no clip-on bars, no what else? No helmets, no clip-on bars, no disc wheels. Real Eddie Merckx, they don't even allow, I think it's anything more than 30 mil wheels or something like that. But
30 mil is typically nothing more than that.
But we're letting people get away with deep dish wheels, and that's it. But the other big one was no clip-on aero bars. So if you have those, you need to take them off if you want to be in the Eddie Merckx division.
And by clip-on aero bars, if you're not familiar with what that is, as you can see, I've got my jersey and stuff. I just filmed the number pinning thing that we'll send out to folks as well. But anything that's protruding from the front of the handlebars like this is going to be not allowed. All you can have is the hooked handlebars or the straight flat bar, okay? We're not going to allow you to be in the Eddie Merckx division if you have a setup where you have the front skewers that you can now drape down and get more arrow into. All that makes sense? I think the people that are on the call already knew that, but just something for beginners there.
You can though, in the Eddie Merckx division, use you can go into as arrow of a body position as you want. You just can't have any of the equipment that helps you do that.
Exactly. So if you are, we're also going to run tomorrow for the series. We're going to have different. We're going to have it like scored essentially. It's not really scored per se. This isn't a USA cycling event or anything, but absolute beginners, arrow and non-arrow, and then the more experienced people who have done races before, arrow and non-arrow division. We've got some people who asked about doing recumbents. We're cool with that too. We'll put the recumbents in the arrow division. The whole point here is to get people out to try it out. You know, there's a lot of questions about time trialing. It is as much about getting everything you can out of your body as it is, and when you're putting your effort out, as it is how much power you can actually put down. There's a ton that goes into being a good time trialist, and a lot of it is making or having the ability to suffer more and get everything you can out of your body. You'll see a lot of times where there's people that are strong racers and are strong on group rides, but when it's just up to them to drive themselves and to power, get as much power out as they can and go as fast as they can, mentally they can't handle it. So don't think that just because you aren't able to hang as long on a group ride or you're not the fastest person around that you won't have a good showing. This is about you learning more about yourself, how hard you can push, and then you get to see how your time stacks up against other folks. And then it's going to be a great starting point for 4 weeks or so down the road. You get to retest and see if you've improved and practice it again. So time trials are great in that regard. So that's kind of like the general lowdown. Time trials are different because they're the only non-mass start event. Everything else you'll do in road cycling is mass start. So it means you are with other people. You can draft. Time trialing, you are not allowed to do that. So going into that a little bit more, there's, oftentimes what will happen is either you will get passed by someone or you will pass someone. It's a lot better to be the latter of those two than the former. But number one, there's no drafting. So USA cycling rules are, I believe it's 10 meters. You can't be within 10 meters of the person in front of you and be directly behind them. You need to start staggering yourself to the side to make a pass once you get within 10 meters of the person in front of you. And then once you get past them, you can then take over the position, and it is up to that person to then fall back 10 meters behind you. What I generally do is I don't pass them and then dive in front of them and force them to slow up. I keep my rhythm. I'll even take a peek back just to make sure that I'm clear of them before I move over to the right side of the road. Don't let it mess with your mind one way or the other. So it's very easy when you pass someone to or as you're approaching someone to go way too hard because you want to. That's your carrot. That's your rabbit. And now you're trying to, once you chase them down, you've either gone way too hard and blown up, or you can get past them and have this, okay, now what sort of thing, and be happy with where you're at and not continue to drive. On the other side, it's a little more defeating when you get passed by someone. But again, this is you versus the clock, you learning what you can do. And you never know, the person that passes you may be the person that's going to win the whole dang thing. So don't let that psych you out. You just keep managing your effort. Or it could mean it's the person who saw you as the rabbit, totally went way too hard. They catch you, they blow up, and then you pass them back and end up putting time back into them. I've had that happen in a race before where it was a short time trial and a hill climb, and halfway through I take a peek back and which don't really need to do, but the 30-second guy behind me was like on my wheel almost. I was like, oh my Lord, this isn't good. And I just settled in. I kept waiting for him to pass, and he never did. And by the finish line, he had then lost 15 seconds to me. So he was 45 seconds behind after he'd already made up, he'd made up that 30. So he lost so much time in the last like 2 miles of this course. So you manage your effort, stay within yourself, gradually try to increase the effort and the power that you're putting out. Even if you don't have power, we use that as a reference as you go along the course, because going out too hard too early will totally smoke you. So tomorrow, and most time trials, unless you get at the upper level, the more elite level, typically they send you off at 30-second intervals. So tomorrow that's what we're going to go with. It's going to be 30-second intervals. Some time trials, they'll have a person that holds you. So they have like a volunteer that's going to allow you to clip in. They'll then hold either your saddle or your seat post, and you'll be able to clip in with both feet if you're running clipless pedals. And then you'll have the official that's counting you down, letting you know when it's 15 seconds, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you take off. At the start, make sure you are in a good gear. So you've gone out, you've been doing your warm-up either on a trainer like I've got right back there, or you've been out on the road, and it's really easy to be in way too hard of a gear. And so you show up to the start line, and your first pedal stroke, you don't go anywhere because you can't put enough force down to actually turn it over because you're in way too hard of a gear. That is a very bad thing. We've seen people like fall over before. We've seen people swerve and go off the road before. So what I tend to do is, and it's going to depend on what kind of cassette you're running, but what I tend to do is I will be either one gear, so from the biggest cog in the back, I'll be like one harder than that, sometimes two harder than that. Granted, it's going to be a little bit cross-chained on your bike, but you're better off being a little too easy versus being way too hard. So you can play around with that. That's something to practice during your warm-up. Get in a starting position and see how quickly you spin the gear up. If the course is going to start on an uphill, you can get away with being in an easier gear. If the course is going to start on a downhill, you can get away with being in a one gear harder. But play around with what allows you to accelerate quickly and doesn't force you to have to shift 4 pedal strokes in. So you're trying to look for that balance. Now, if you're lucky and you've got like the electronic shifting that's out on the wings, now you can have the best of both worlds, because you can shift while standing without having to drop down and do the center changing for you folks that are doing the aero division. All right, so there's the start. From a pacing.
I'll add one note there.
Okay.
Be careful about when you set your gearing. Like Brian was saying, if you set up to a really easy gear, be careful about cross-chaining too much and then back spinning. When you get up on your bike to set your feet and clip your pedals in, if you're being held, when you get up on your bike, be careful about how much you backspin, because if you're cross-chained, it can throw the chain off. And in a time trial, your start time is your start time. There is no other start time. So if you throw the chain with 10 seconds to go to your start time, you have to jump off the bike, fix it yourself, and then you have to just get on and go. And you lost however much time you had sitting there messing with your chain. It's happened to me. I mean, it sucks, but you just got to be careful whatever gear you're in. If you know it, when you backspin, it drops the chain. You may want to just make sure you set your feet a little differently, or get up on the bike a little differently, so you don't have to backspin.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that kind of goes into something else that I guess we should talk about a little bit, is when I first start my warm-ups, if I'm doing my warm-up on the road, I make sure I go and ride to where the official scoring is. And if they have the big timer going, I cross-reference that with my watch, because the time you have on your phone or your watch isn't necessarily the start time for the event. And then I like to, I make sure I find out, okay, if my time is like this past weekend was 6:37, I'll roll up and ask them what time they're at and what they've got. And then I know how much leeway I've got to make sure I'm there on time. I always like to make sure I'm there probably about 3 to 5 minutes. Sometimes they like you there as early as you can, but 3 to 5 minutes before your time goes. And then I always use that time to, mentally start really focusing on what's coming up, envisioning the course, how I'm going to ride the course, where I'm going to push, where I'm going to conserve a little bit. And then we've talked about this before, breathing. I start doing the initial breathing, that pre-oxygenation. It helps calm you down a little bit, and then has that extra bonus of making sure you've got plenty of oxygen-rich blood going through your body. Anything to add on that, Dale? Don't miss your start time. It happens to a lot of people, but
that's something that if you've never done a time trial before, that you may not really understand. Like, there is no other start time. When you get your start time, that is your start time. And if you miss the clock, based on the master clock, your time has started. So sometimes they'll let you can like jump through if you miss it and go, but whatever it counted down, that's added to your time. So
yeah, what you'll do in that situation, if you do miss it, you need to report to the official still. So you roll up and say, my name's so-and-so, here's my number. And if they say, okay, you've already gone, usually what they'll do, they'll make you put a foot down first. So you have to unclip, put a foot down, and then go. Okay? So make sure you check in, because if they're logging everyone that's gone through, that they've started, and they don't have a log time of your start, but they have a log time of your finish, there's going to be a lot of questions as to, where were you at the start? You may not get scored. They may nullify your time. So make sure you still report with the starting official, so that they can log that, yes, you did actually start. You just started late. But they aren't going to adjust it. They're not going to look at your Strava file and say, okay, their Strava was 10 seconds faster than what we scored them at. None of that's going to happen, okay? So the time that they have, sometimes there's errors, but it's just the way it is. There is human error involved with everything that happens. So sometimes that happens, and hopefully tomorrow we won't have that happen. But there is human error involved, and it can happen.
Keep in mind, you'll have generally you'll have a number that you're given at check-in.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, we will have numbers tomorrow. We should have numbers tomorrow. But make sure that your number, and Brian, I guess, has already done a little video on this that he'll send out.
I just knocked it out. Yeah.
Pinning the numbers. Just the big thing is to make sure that if you have one single number, it ends up on the side of which the officials will be standing. So if the officials are standing on the right side of the road, the number needs to be on the right side of your body. And that's the only way you're going to get an accurate time, is if they can see that number and it's on the right side of your body.
The correct side. Yep.
Yeah, the correct side of your body. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make sure it should be uploading right now, so that the number pinning will be visible. Also posted on the time trial page, posted up there as well, so that everyone has their numbers upright. You don't look goofy with the upside down number thing.
Don't be that person.
Every race. So hopefully we won't have it happen, but I guarantee you we will. All right, so I think that covers most of the kind of the prep. As far as warm-up's concerned, we recommend, kind of our protocol is you want probably at least, bare minimums would be about 20 minutes of warm-up time. But we would actually recommend going probably closer to 30 for a 10-mile TT, I would likely warm up for around 40 minutes for that, 30 to 40 minutes. And you want to make sure you have intervals that are in there that are equal to the effort you're going to be putting out in the race. But don't make them, in our experience, we found that you don't want to make those too long. So you don't go out and knock out a threshold level, super hard effort for 12 minutes to warm yourself up for a, 30, 25, 30, whatever minute effort it's going to be. Instead, I like to keep them to about 1 minute in duration and give myself 1 to 2 to 3 minutes, depending on how much warm-up time I have in between those efforts of just lighter spinning. And that has always worked really well for me. The big goal is you need to load the legs up, let them clear. Load them up, let them clear. And I know we've talked about this on a previous coach's hour, so we're not going to go much deeper than that. So you got your warm-up in. So you got your number at packet pickup or registration. You figured out what your start time is, so you know your start time. If possible, you can go and check your start time with the official. And if they're like getting ready to send someone off, don't be yelling at them that you need to know what the race time is. And instead, be patient. Take the 30 seconds between to ask them. And most are cool with that. Then you're going to go complete your warm-up. Make sure you get your warm-up in. And then after that, show up to the start line, 5 minutes early, 3 minutes early. You're not gonna tighten up in 3 minutes or 5 minutes. So don't psychologically let that mess with you. Like, oh, I'm standing here or sitting here too long. Start going through how you're going to approach the course. Get your breathing going. Calm yourself down a little bit. Check the gear you're in. Make sure you check that gear you're in. Go to the start line. You clip in. If they have a holder, ask the holder before you just clip in with both feet. So clip in with one like you normally would, and then say, "Do you got me?" Or "You got a hold of me? Are you ready?"
Check that.
And then clip in with your other one once they say yes. Don't just assume because you've clipped in with one and you're at the start line that they've got you, because we've seen that happen before too, where the tip over happens at the start. So make sure they've got a hold of you. You're in a good gear now. The crucial part, do not go out too hard the first minute. I guarantee you're going to feel like a superhero the first minute of your race. You're going to go out, you're all jacked up, jazzed up. The adrenaline starts going. You have all these thoughts of top speed. You're going to hold 40 miles an hour for the whole thing. And the first minute, you feel like a champion. And the second minute, you're like, holy crap, this is not good. My legs are loaded to the max. Even though I just told you this, it's probably going to happen to you tomorrow. Probably. What do you think, Dale? What are the odds that it's going to happen?
It's a solid 92%.
Yeah, it definitely is. So be a little conservative. It's a lot better to make up time the back half than it is to go out and then suffer like a dog, see your speed coming down, see your heart rate going up, your legs feel horrible, you never recover. So build into it. And don't totally smoke yourself the first 30 seconds to a minute. So I get up to speed. It's not a max sprint, but I like to make sure, and this varies, but I like to make sure I get up to speed while standing and then settle into my aero bars. Some people like to drop down aero as quick as they can and then continue to accelerate while they're aero. Dale, what do you do?
I usually get in like 3 to 5 seconds of a hard effort, because I've found that doesn't affect my heart rate. So 3 to 5 seconds, and then I immediately drop into aero and continue to usually I'm up to speed by then, but if I need to continue to accelerate, then it happens in aero.
Gotcha.
I don't ever do any more than about 5 seconds worth of a hard start, because any more than that usually results of a lot larger increase in heart rate or perceived exertion right after that.
So Dale and I are a little bit opposite. For me, my heart, I never feel like I can get up to that top speed unless I'm doing it standing. And it's not like I'm standing and trying to win a sprint the first, 15 seconds. If you're someone who hasn't gone through the pedal stroke stuff and hasn't spent time out of the saddle, working out of saddle mechanics, you will definitely want to drop down aero quicker, sooner rather than later. If you're very comfortable out of the saddle and you know that doesn't load your legs up or spike things too much, then you can stay out of the saddle a little bit longer. And then after that, so now we're out on the course, get your breathing going right away. Don't wait till you start feeling the effort to start the breathing. Get your breathing going right away. And then it's just a matter of processing what your body's telling you, processing whether or not your body is lying to you. Can you go harder? Is it your brain that's getting weak, or are you physically not able to push at that level? And mentally, I'm always thinking, okay, how I feel, how hard have I gone? How much further do I have to go? How do I feel right now? Can I go a little bit harder? Can I go, or should I go a little bit easier? So I'm always running through that, and at the same time going through the mental checklist that we've talked about numerous times, and I know all of you fine folks that are on here live have gone and looked at as well. If you haven't, do it. I mean, it's one of the keys, and allows you to not just think about, oh my God, this hurts so bad. It's gonna hurt. It's supposed to hurt. Your goal is to suffer for less time because you're gonna go faster. Questions on any of that? Dale, anything to add to that?
I mean, aside from the mental checklist, like the big one is breathing. If your breathing falls off, your effort's going to fall off just as quick. So make sure you're really focusing on the breathing part of that mental checklist. And like Brian said, you can always put distance on your Garmin so you can see it and get a gauge for how much further you have to go. A lot of times, like on a course sort of like Watkins where there's rollers and whatnot, especially on the way back, like later in the event, I'll start just setting like little goals for myself as far as like, all right, just hold this wattage to the top of this roller, or just push to that driveway, or push to that, and then once you hit that, you go to the next thing, push to that light pole, and before you know it, you're racking up distance, and your brain then realizes how close you are, and you get that last little second wind, and you can hammer out the last, basically as soon as you see the finish line, you can see the finish line. Most people can just come out of nowhere and put in a really good hard effort for the last little bit there.
One thing that we have with our athletes, the question we get all the time is, what number should I target? And that's kind of a tricky thing because day to day, vary.
Train.
Dale's got the train. So day to day, it can vary. And so totally being so rigid in a number can be a really bad thing with a time trial. You may be underdoing it, or you may be overdoing it relative to what your body's capable of on that day. Now, you can use power and heart rate as kind of a limiter. So if I'm using power, and I know my power zones really well, and I'm 15% above what I know I can hold for what I think is going to be that duration, I know I need to back it down a little bit and save that for later. Maybe I'm on a great day. That's fine. I can always ramp later. You can always go harder later, but it's super, super difficult to get as much out of yourself if you go out hard and then finish, you explode essentially. You go out way too hard, you load up. You're not going to have the same speed. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to have the same power. Mentally, when you're suffering and the speed's getting lower rather than improving, or power's getting lower rather than improving, heart rate's not a good gauge for this because it can just stay high the whole time. Mentally, it is very deflating. So you're not going to have as good a time as you would the other way. When you're suffering and you're going fast still, that's easy to hold. It's a lot easier mentally to stay on top of that. When you're suffering and going slower, that's a different story. Or if you're suffering and you get passed by someone late in the ride and everything's just been going worse and worse and worse, and now you get passed by someone, that can be like the nail in the coffin for some people. So do yourself a favor, listen to your body, listen to your legs initially, and underride that for tomorrow. Underride the first 5 miles out. Don't overcook that. If you haven't done a time trial before, keep that slightly easier. If you get passed, who cares? After the turnaround, now you only have to pace yourself for half the course. You only have to pace yourself for 5 miles. And that's a lot easier to get everything you can over your body over that last 5 miles. So that's when you start building, you start ramping. So that would be my biggest recommendation is don't blow yourself up that first minute by feeling like a superhuman, because it's going to come back to haunt you. And underride slightly the first half and then recoup it on the second half. Sanford?
Yeah, that's about right. Now, by underwriting slightly, we don't mean just mosey the first half and then smash out the second half.
No.
But dial it back to something that you know is sustainable for the first half, and then smash it home.
Yeah, you want to be telling yourself, it's going to hurt, but I could definitely hold this for 10 miles. You don't want it to be, I have no clue whether I can hold this for 10 miles, but I hope so, because that's not going to work out for you. Once the adrenaline wears off a little bit and the fatigue starts building, reality can set in pretty quick. At the state TT 2 weeks ago, my speed was where I wanted it. It was actually a little above, and I was feeling really, really good at the time. And I avoided the urge to push harder and to try to gain seconds and catch the person in front of me. And instead I said, okay, I'm happy. I'm very happy with where I'm at right now. I'm going to keep it a little bit conservative, ride within myself. And the last 6 miles, when we hit a headwind, the wind picked up, and it was a struggle the last 6 miles. It was super hard. And the whole time I'm like, oh my God, if I'd have gone too hard that first 12 miles, I would have been hemorrhaging huge amounts of time right now. So really be slightly conservative on it. And I've done a ton of TTs. So the more TTs you do, the more efforts like this you do, the more you do it in training, the better you're going to be able to know what your body's telling you, whether you can push harder or not. If you need to back it down, you'll get more experience. That's why we're encouraging folks to just get out there for the first time. Try it out. You may go out and blow up. So what? You learn from it. You learn what your body was telling you. That's why we always want you processing what your body's telling you. The burn in your legs, the burn in your lungs. Make sure you pay attention to how that feels, and then pay attention to how you feel after the ride or the event or the race, whatever it is, and use that as information for the next time. Okay, I went way too hard. I know what it felt like. Next time I'm going to make sure I don't feel like that. I'm going to go a little easier and ramp more. So use it all as a learning experience. I still learn from races.
Every single one.
Every one.
I think the only other thing we need to kind of touch on is the dealing with the course. The course is, well, for the local time trial series and for most time trials, the course is not ever completely closed. So the roads will have cars on them. So it's more of an issue when you're approaching the turnaround.
Yeah.
So as you approach the turnaround to do the 180, come back down the other side of the road, make sure you do not cross the road and look back and make sure there's not any cars coming before you make the exchange across the road. We can't prevent all the cars from going up and down Watkins and There's very few outside of the pro events and national events. There are very few time trials that are going to be on totally closed courses.
Yeah, I have never done an event on a time trial on a closed course.
Yeah. So be diligent about checking over your shoulder before you make any moves across the road to do U-turns or whatever.
Yeah. And if say you're in the aero category and you're not comfortable taking a peek back while you're aero, get out of aero first. Get on the wings to where you are more stable and comfortable. Make sure you check that the road ahead is clear and there's no debris in the road before you start looking back as well, and take that quick peek. What I would do, I'm not going to be racing tomorrow, but what I would do is when I'm within a half mile of the turnaround, I would start doing the peaks there. And if it's clear, I would move to the left lane, pretend I'm a vehicle, and I would get to the left lane once you know it's clear. Now, the cars are going to be going pretty fast there, but they should recognize that there's cyclists in the area. If you're not comfortable doing that, don't do it. And know that there's not going to be cars stopping coming the other way. So don't think that, I'm in a bike, I'm racing my bike and I'm trying to go as fast as I can. So all cars are going to give me the right of way. That is not going to be the case. So if you get slowed down by a car, it happens. I've had races where I've had to slow up for cars.
I've been stopped by a train before.
Stopped by a train before. Dale got slowed up a few weeks ago and ended up having a casualty of war.
Yeah.
With cars all backed up. So even having police there doesn't guarantee you that a car is going to stop. We are not going to have police there tomorrow, but you'll do events. Cops will be there. A lot of cops don't know about bike racing. They don't know about triathlons. And so they may be thinking they're doing the right thing when really they're not. And don't let it be a false sense of security that there's a cop at a red light so you can blow right through it. There's no red lights for us tomorrow, but I've done events where there's red lights, and you still need to keep your head up and don't just assume it's going to be clear. Take your safety as paramount and your time as secondary. You can always go, okay, I had to stop for a car for 10 seconds and subtract that from your time mentally when you're finished and see how you did and use that as your benchmark for the next time. So crap does happen to you, but just keep your safety as number one, and your time as second, and stay safe. What else, Dale? Flats. If you have a flat out there, I typically don't ever race with a flat kit with me. Assuming that if I flat, it's going to be race over anyway. The issue would be getting back to the start line. So if you're someone that wants to take the flat stuff with you, go ahead. You can either, if you're wearing a jersey, you can just throw it in your jersey pocket or use your bike pouch. It's not going to add a ton of time. And the goal here is to see how you improve. So just keep the same setup the next time. Or if you're trying to go as fast as you can, remove it. If you flat, yell at someone that goes by you to, let people know that there was a flat on the road, and then hope that someone comes and sweeps you up.
Yeah, we'll send a sweeper after everybody's gone. If we see a person or two has not come back, we'll send the sweeper van down and back on Watkins.
Yeah. And always make sure, so there are options in a lot of time trials. There's side roads, and there's options sometimes to like cut the course. So say you're having a horrible day, you feel crappy, and you decide, forget it, I'm not finishing, this is going horrible. You need to go let the officials know that you're no longer participating, so they don't have to go, oh, what happened to so-and-so? They started, but now they haven't finished. We need everyone accounted for at the end. So even if it means you're just going to slow ride back, or just slow ride back. I mean, make sure you go and tell the official that you're out of it. Tomorrow that would be finishing anyway. If you end up cutting the course, make sure you tell the official. Don't cheat and cut the course early and then go and just take that as your time. If you're not feeling good and you are quitting, still go tell the official, but let them know that you are out, not to score you. Any questions on that? I know, type it into the group chat if you can, if anyone has questions. We've talked about, not a ton about pacing, but we talked about that a lot on other ones. We talked about not going out too hard. That's huge. Gearing. We talked about number placement. I'll send out the video as well. I'll post on the Facebook group also about how to pin on your numbers best and actually the orientation of it. What else?
I think that covers the majority of it. Yeah, if you have any other questions, just throw them up on the chat here, or you can post them up on the Facebook group if we end this here soon.
Yeah, this is one of the best intros into what it's like to be a road racer. And most unintimidating, the safest overall. It doesn't mean – I've seen a lot of wrecks in time trials. It doesn't mean there's no wrecks. So keep your head up. Don't duck your head the whole time and just hope for the best. But this is one of the safer events you can do. You can get a feel for it. It's kind of like a great way to break the seal on and figure out whether or not more road race style events is something you would like to do. So get out there, have fun. Don't worry about your time so much. Instead, worry about managing and learning from what you do and how you do it. That's more important than any time. Beginners, first timers, you stand the most room to grow. Either higher level folks. If a higher level person is gaining 10 seconds over the course of these first two, that's a pretty big deal. Beginners, I wouldn't be surprised to see beginners knocking minutes off their time. So get out there, use this as the benchmark, and then join in for the next two and see how your time improves. That's all I got.
That's all I got.
All right. I don't see any questions rolling through, so I guess that is a wrap, folks. We'll see you out there tomorrow. Ideally, for those that are doing it, try to register today if you can. That's going to really help us logistically and will save you some money. If you're not a Hightailers member and you plan on doing all three, just save yourself $15 and join the Hightailers. They do a lot of good stuff for the local cycling community as a whole. And, it's only, $25 a year, I think, to be a part of it. And you get $5 off for each one of these.
You also get insurance at all of their events and all of their all the Hightailers group rides too, I think.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, just go ahead and
totally worth the $25.
Oh, for sure. Yep. All right. Well, that's all we got. Hope to see folks out there tomorrow. And grip and rip. Trust your training. Onward and upward. Shammy time is hammer time.
Adios.
Later.